Shapemaker. I'm also together with Marta-Lisa, Customer Success Manager from Shapemaker, and Andy from Telia Towers Norway. Just while people are joining the chat, I can talk a little bit about Shapemaker, quickly introduce what our company is about. Shapemaker is a cloud-based platform for structural civil engineering of telecom infrastructure. And we are basically on a journey to speed up processes for tower costs and engineering consultants. And we are very, very happy to be joined by Andy Dick from Telia Towers Norway. And also, I want to just, before we jump in this discussion about the journey from Telia Towers, I wanted also to say that please feel free to use your chat and ask questions. So we are happy to collect your feedback or questions, and a short Q&A session will be in the end of this webinar. And we will try to answer as many questions as possible, hopefully. Let's see. You can also participate with your reactions. There is like an emoji. Please feel free to click on it if you see it, and give us some reactions from your side. And maybe you can write in the chat if you can hear us well before we start. If there are, yes, okay, I see now. Sounds good. Okay, then it seems like we are ready. Hearts coming in. That's nice. Always nice to see. Perfect. Okay, then I would like to ask Andy to introduce himself, because that's the main person in the call for us in this webinar, to ask Andy different questions. So I will be asking all sorts of questions from him. And yes, Andy, would you please introduce yourself and also introduce Telia Towers if you can?
Sure. Well, what I can do is start with Telia Towers. I think back in 2019, Telia decided to split off the tower business in Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And they established a company, Telia Towers Partners. And under Telia Towers Partners, we have three companies: Telia Towers Norway, who I work for, Telia Towers Finland, and Telia Towers Sweden. In Sweden, most people will know that Telia is the name of the old state-owned telecom monopoly. In Finland, it was Sonera. And so Telia Towers Sweden and Telia Towers Finland have the legacy towers portfolio from when it was a state monopoly. We're a little different here in Telia Towers Norway, because Telia bought Netcom, which was a pure mobile operator. So they started in the late 90s building out 2G, perhaps 1G, but definitely 2G technology. So most of the towers that we have are typically under 30 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
My background is in radio electronics. I started building towers about 30 years ago, and I've been working with Telia Towers Norway now for a little bit over 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And we started Shapemaker and Telia Towers Norway. We started in 2023, as far as I remember, with Telia Towers Norway, and then recently we expanded to other countries, so Sweden and Finland, correct?
Yep.
And yes, so we had some years already in collaboration with each other. So could you please tell us about previous engineering processes, like what before we started our partnership, what kind of engineering processes, what did they look like before, and what kind of challenges at that time?
Previously, all of our tower documentation was in CAD drawings, and CAD is a very, very useful tool. It's great if you're going to build a car and design it from the ground up. But if you want to be recording where you place antennas on a tower, it's probably a little bit of overkill. You don't need to know to a degree of millimeters where something is placed in a tower. When a contractor goes and installs something, they might be plus or minus 10 or 20 centimeters from where you've assigned them. So that level of detail is unnecessary. When we had strength calculations done, they were done by a local engineering consultancy, and they would deliver a report in PDF format.
Mm-hmm.
So then we had DWG files and PDF form files, which aren't really useful. They're great when you actually look at that particular project and what you're doing. But if you want to actually use it as information going forward in modern systems, it's not really useful for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes, and that's why I was sharing from the very beginning the screen of Shapemaker platform with a digital twin that I just opened up, and basically what you were saying, Andy, that in the past the process was quite manual and all this basically DWG and PDF documentation, and now I'm just going to show this digital twin with all these antennas with different tenants that we mark in different colors right here, and ancillaries or antenna data is shown. Antenna list is kind of digitized on this digital twin, as you can see here. A huge list of very busy, very nice looking structure, but the impact of the Shapemaker platform when we shifted from this manual digital solution to Shapemaker platform, and also I was wondering what was the impact not only on the company but also on the team? What kind of team you had, and you mentioned that you were outsourcing your engineering calculations to a consultancy, a third-party company. What is the setup now? What is the impact of Shapemaker right now?
One of the challenges we faced at the time that I started was that two of the main mobile network operators here in Norway were involved in 5G upgrades. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, there were a lot of requests to do strength calculations on these towers. So we were seeing that when we sent an order for a strength calculation, that it would take typically 6 weeks before we would get a calculation. And what we want to do is we want to be very responsive to our customers. So when they send us an inquiry about something, we want to give them an answer within 1 or 2 weeks, if they can have what they want and how much it's going to cost them. Mm-hmm. The faster we can be responsive to them, then the sooner we can get them actually installed in one of our towers. So that was one of the big changes for us. The advantage with Shapemaker is you don't need to be an engineer to do it. Mm-hmm. We took the opportunity with onboarding Shapemaker to do an audit of our sites. So we would look at the previous applications that we've got from customers, see what we offered them, have a look at the photo documentation and any as-built that they delivered, and see what do we actually have on our sites today. We would then put this information in Shapemaker. If I had a completely new site and I really had to dig through the documentation going back 10 years, it might take me a couple of hours to actually collect all that information I needed. But actually putting it in Shapemaker, when I started, maybe it would take an hour to do it. Now it'll probably take me 15 minutes. Once I've put that in and I run a calculation, I've got a result in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So, I've gone from a 6 week process to a 1 day process, and now it's even shorter. Yeah. And then the big advantage for us is that when you have multiple operators having high activity at the same time, when I have the first operator ask me for an upgrade or an input setting on a site, I can do that calculation. I've got it in Shapemaker. I've got the drawing. I've got all the information I need.
Mm-hmm.
The next operator comes to me and asks me, it's a 30-minute job at the most. I've already got most of the information. I put the new customer information in and run a new calculation. And I have everything already updated in Shapemaker.
Sounds cool. I really like what you said, Andy, from weeks or months down to basically days or sometimes even minutes. That's what you highlighted. It's a very good feedback for us to see, using Shapemaker, cutting down the collocation applications and engineering calculations basically down to days, responding to your end clients in days instead of weeks and months. I think it's a big impact, as far as I understand, on the business itself. And maybe I can briefly show, very briefly. So this is our antenna tab in our software. What you see here is a 3D model, and we have ancillary database which you can search and pick antenna. For example, this type. Let's say we are applying 2 different antennas as a collocation request. We add it to the structure, then it comes into the list at the bottom of this the list, and it's basically, you just need to assign the tenant name, azimuth, and the elevation. And of course, we have all sorts of additional ways of adjusting this ancillary. And I can even run this calculation, and you will see while we are talking, it will take basically seconds. So that's what you and just highlighted. I just want to show how easy it is. And in addition, in Shapemaker, we are API ready software, so it can be, even this ancillary can be implemented not by hand, but through API integration with some other internal or external platforms. So very interesting overview that you highlighted, Andy. And okay, so the time has been reduced dramatically, answering this call request and building maybe new structures or updating existing. But how did it impact the business, and some kind of maybe business metrics have been improved? If you can just in general discuss highlight some type of business metrics improvement in Telia.
I think one of the most important benefits for our customers is that we're more responsive to them. We can give them an answer much quicker than we could do before. What are the other benefits? Well, I mean, we have better information from where our equipment is. One of the challenges in a tower company is that if there is an antenna installed that is in the wrong place and you haven't identified that, you might offer that space to a customer. Now they go out, they go to install it, then there is waiting time, finding out from maybe from the subcontractor back to the customer and back to us, hey, what are we going to do about this? And this is a financial loss to the customer. So if we can eliminate that by having a better overview of what we have on our towers, that's going to translate into lower costs for our customers as well.
Mm-hmm. Correct. That's very good. And I just, while you were talking, I ran this analysis, basically ran a full, complete structural analysis with these 2 new antennas that I attached as a, let's say, imagine it was a colo application. And here in Shapemaker, you can see the results and basically the overall status of the structure, saying underloaded, so basically passing the analysis. And also in the past, I ran the structure previously, and you can see the history the history of our checks. And in the beginning of the history of analysis, a few days ago, the structure was overloaded. I'm just showing it, basically highlighting what you are mentioning, Andy, and just for our audience also to see the capability. And one additional question that I'm very interested is about your favorite functionality, let's say, in Shapemaker, because we have quite a lot and there is no time to show everything. But if you can highlight one or several.
I think there is one important thing that Shapemaker does that has made a big difference for us. When we're very, very conscious when we build a site. Our expectation is it's going to stay there for 50 years, and we want to make sure that that tower is not overloaded. So we want to take all the available information in when we do that. One of the things that wasn't done in our previous calculations was the orography factor. And if you don't know what that is, you can have a look on Shapemaker's blog. It'll give you some in-depth information on that. Basically, it's about the terrain and how that affects the wind coming from various directions and the speed up of the wind. And the reason it wasn't done previously was it's actually a complicated mathematical process to go through. And I did it one time following the information that you have on your blog to see actually what is this calculation? How does it work this out? And it took me a long time. Shapemaker does it instantaneously. It's just included. If I have a look, I see you've got up the location data there, and yes, it'll tell me what the terrain category is from 8 different directions. It'll tell me what the orography factor is, and that can make a big difference when I design a site. If I didn't have the orography factor included, I might conclude that the tower structure was sufficient for the antennas that I'd planned there. When I include the orography factor, I'll find that it's actually overloaded.
Yes, that's perfect. And you mentioned our website. I just wanted to quickly show shapemaker.io. And for people who are interested, we have a few videos describing how to create a structure, how to build your antennas, and so on. So please feel free to investigate. And also the blog, Shapemaker blog, we have a lot of different topics there. Please also, whoever is interested. And yes, what you highlighted basically is the site-specific analysis, which takes a lot of time for consultants or for engineering companies or for our companies basically to analyze this site-specific wind, topography, exposure, and we do it in seconds. Maybe I can show quickly. So at the moment, the structure is, of course, it's a demo structure located in Oslo, but I can move it to like a very challenging terrain. Let's put it somewhere in the mountains or near the fjord in Norway. And what I need to do is just to click automatic wind profile calculation with this new location. And what we do within seconds, which takes days probably if you do it by hand, we analyze exposure, terrain category, and orography, as you highlighted, and basically also bring the wind speed. And we can investigate different directions. Let's say I highlight this 3-4 wind directions, and I can see the wind profile, and the difference in wind load is quite dramatic, from 30 to 37 meters per second. So we account in our calculations are very precise. So we account this different wind loading in different directions, which probably engineers usually don't do. I worked as a consultant in the past, and I usually did like the most critical wind load distributing around the whole structure. So which is very, very, very conservative way of calculation. But very interesting. I also believe, and I agree with you, that this functionality is very powerful, and it really unlocks the potential can unlock the potential of the structure and generate more let's say, revenue for tower companies if you investigate site-specific analysis and then have maybe hopefully a bigger capacity. So very interesting to hear your opinion. And we also have this functionality called batch analysis, which we are quite new feature. Have you been able to perform batch analysis, or what? How would you describe it, and can it impact? How is it useful for the operations at Telia?
This is a really useful function, because once we've put all of our structures in Shapemaker, I can then get Shapemaker to reanalyze all of the structures, and you know, I can just tell it to do a batch analysis before I go home. I don't know how long it takes, but if I come back in the morning, they're all reanalyzed. And I had a situation where I had one ancillary from a customer, and I found out that the dimensions that we'd been using were actually incorrect. So I went into the ancillary database, updated the dimensions of the ancillary, and then I simply ran a batch analysis of all the sites. Whereas, you know, this was, yeah, it's not really an option previously under the system that we used. And it can be very useful if, for example, perhaps you have a customer who is using an antenna, and you've been basing it upon the dimensions of that antenna, but maybe they come back and they say, we've got a vortex generators on this on this antenna. You can then remodel it with the effect of the vortex generators, and then rerun your portfolio.
Yeah, that's very cool. I completely agree. Sometimes, like if there was a mistake even in antenna specification and you use, let's say, completely different dimensions of this antenna, and then suddenly you got a spec which is correct, then what you need to do, you go to the database of ancillary database that we have, antenna database, basically pick your antenna that you are working or updating. For example, this antenna, you can change the geometry and save the changes, and all the structures that this antenna was installed will be updated. So you don't need to go from structure to structure and update the same antenna, which will take, depending on how many structures we are talking about, can take forever. And as you said, like vortex, I think this very detailed, let's say, wind tunnel results come in for some challenging antenna. And then you can specify here, for example, instead of geometry-based antenna specification, you can specify force coefficients from, let's say, this wind tunnel test. You can put the forces directly and again save it and update for the whole portfolio. So that's a very good insight. And I wanted to show we have this tab called Insights, and here's the batch analysis. The batch analysis, one way of triggering batch analysis. And this Insight tab, also briefly to mention that it shows metrics on the entire portfolio within your account. Okay, very, very cool. And I have another question about data onboarding. Can you share quickly experience with data onboarding, because it's very difficult or challenging for some of our clients to basically go from one solution, one software to another software, like Shapemaker. So this transition can be very challenging, but we provide some type of data onboarding, and I just wanted to ask you what are your experiences?
Well, this is something that you provide now. I don't think you were providing it when we started out, and I don't think what we had was really suitable for onboarding. So we took the opportunity to actually do an audit of our sites and actually do some quality checking of our data. But we were also talking previously about digital twins, where some operators are looking at getting digital twins. And I was thinking about this morning, actually, because I had a site that I was looking at recently where we made an offer to a customer where they would have 6 antennas and 9 ROUs. They've done their installation. They've installed 3 antennas and 6 ROUs. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to install the other equipment at a later date. Now, if I went and got a digital twin done of that tower, it's going to pick up what's actually there on that date, but it's not going to pick up that I've got space rented out to a customer. And if the customer installs their equipment tomorrow, next week, or next year, it doesn't really matter. That space is reserved for the customer and they're paying for it. The other problem with a digital twin is it's only any good on that day that it's done. And if you have a lot of activity from multiple customers at the same time, you then have to update that information. And it could be that they go out and do a digital twin today, but the installers go out and actually install equipment tomorrow. So your digital twin is already outdated. You still have to physically, manually update that information with what the processes are you're going through at the moment.
Very, very interesting. Yes, absolutely. And yes, talking about this, being able to update your digital twin or keeping the data up to date and ancillary data up to date, we also provide this API integration at Shapemaker. So we basically integrate into portfolio management platforms to bring this to cut the process of the process that you were just describing about updating the data, to cut it as much as possible. So could you please tell us, if possible, what is the portfolio management platform you are using internally, and if you agree or disagree that Shapemaker with API integration with your digital platform, with your portfolio management platform, can improve these challenges?
We are using SiteTracker, and part of the reason we actually chose Shapemaker is that we plan to have an integration with Shapemaker and SiteTracker. SiteTracker is where we're going to have all the information regarding the inventory that we have on a site. But Shapemaker is something that SiteTracker doesn't offer, but I think it's a great complementary tool to SiteTracker.
Perfect. Yes, I also believe that integration into portfolio management platform like SiteTracker can definitely boost value of both softwares. So, and also I wanted to mention that actually some of our clients don't even have to work in Shapemaker. They can trigger analysis from portfolio management platform after the integration. Of course, they can basically update the antenna in their portfolio management platform like SiteTracker, and click on the analyze button, which will trigger Shapemaker to analyze the structure, and Shapemaker will push the outcome or the report or the data that based on the calculation that we conduct. So basically, you don't even need to open up our software. You can work without touching the software, which is very future proof and very provides big value in terms of the cutting the time, in my opinion.
I'd just like to add, Evan, that this is what we see great value, that our customer, through the customer portal, the radio planner will put in the equipment they want, and they will send a request, and there's no human intervention required. It will have a look and it'll see, is there antenna space, is there power, is there floor space in the shelter, and they will get a response from the system. If there are some questions that it can't answer, then it comes to some human intervention. So that will result in the customer having an answer very, very quickly themselves.
Absolutely. Okay, then I have, we spent half an hour, and maybe just to have some questions from the audience. But before we jump into that, just last question, Andy, about the challenges. Of course, all these beautiful things that you described, it's very good, but can you talk a little bit about any challenges that you faced during your transition to from the old way of working with Shapemaker?
Well, when we started, Shapemaker was in its infancy, so a lot of the features, nice features, weren't available at that stage, and it was a bit of a steep learning curve for me as well, in terms of looking at things like the shielding for equipment. What kind of shielding factors should I use? How do we treat cables in the mast, for example? What kind of shielding factor do we have on cables? How do we represent them as, rather than a solid block, that it is actually some round cables and the wind is going to go between them, things like that. No, I think it was a fairly smooth transition, actually. From day one, we were getting the answers that we needed. So that was great for us. We delivered to you the drawings for the type of towers that we have and the foundations. So that was already in there from day one when we started.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks, Andy. And you mentioned foundations. Yes, I wanted to highlight that, yes, we analyze not only superstructure, the lattice structure, lattice tower or guide mast on monopole. We also analyze the foundation. It's very good that you mentioned that. And also this shielding calculation. We recently introduced this automatic shielding that you can trigger. And basically, you don't have to worry about all this. For example, this is a very good case, heavy loaded structure with lots of antennas that shield each other. So by just triggering this the toggle, you can all the shielding will be automatically calculated for you. And you also mentioned the communication, or that we, of course, we started on in our early stage, and we of course delivered a lot of new features, as you said. And we also developed this chat where actually it's not a chat bot, but you can basically chat with our engineers or IT developers or telecom engineers directly in Shapemaker in the chat. So if you are wondering about something, or you don't know how to use some functionality, you can always ask, and we immediately respond to the users. Okay, but then I think that's really good. We are on time, and then maybe we can open up for some questions, and I can ask Marta-Lisa to pick a few interesting questions from the chat.
Yes, we have received about 5 questions.
Yeah.
And so we have 2 questions about the wind. Is it limited to Norway and Europe, or do you support wind and terrain data for other parts of the world as well? That's for you, Evan.
Yes, that's a perfect question. So we basically support our main geography is Europe. We support all European countries, and we support. We developed Eurocode with annexes from different countries in Europe. So the wind is automatically determined based on the location of your structure. When you pick the latitude and longitude, we know the exact basic wind speed, and then on top of that, as we discussed and highlighted, we do this site-specific analysis. And we also going to expand into TIA, American standard, and Australian standard later on this year.
Yes, thank you. And we used multiple directions calculating the wind. And is there a reason why you have limited to 8 directions? UK had moved to using 12 as standard.
Yes, actually, that's a perfect question. You can edit the wind direction. You can add more if you need. You can add more than 8, as many as you wish, and you can adjust the directions themselves. So it's we are not limiting this part. It's up to you, but we also following Eurocode, the requirements of the Eurocode. So if you choose, let's say, like Marta-Liisa highlighted this UK annex, then the wind directions will be per UK annex to the Eurocode. So basically, we are following it, but we are allowing user to update and build more wind directions and adjust them. So full flexibility in that front.
Yes. Would you please describe ice calculations too?
Yes, icing calculation is very challenging, of course. We introduced, for example, if I change, maybe I can highlight this different annexes to the Eurocode. If I choose, let's say, German Eurocode, and we basically developed calculation. In this case, when I choose German Eurocode, it's per German standard. And we also we're asking the user to provide the ice and ice density, and the rest is taken care of by the software. We calculate icing calculation. But this is a very big topic. I will just very briefly say like that. And we are happy to actually set up another webinars with very specific topics, and one of them definitely can be icing calculation, because it takes quite a lot of time to explain.
Thank you. And then we have a question to Telia. How does Telia document belonging customer equipment? Like former you showed the ancillaries, and this solution only provides tower and antennas. This question is to you, Andy.
We document customer equipment in Site Tracker. So typically when we get an application from a customer, they will specify which equipment they want to install, be it in the mast or in the shelter. They will tell us what their maximum power consumption is going to be, how much backup they require on battery, and how many cables they're going to run from in the shelter up to the mast. And all of that information resides in Site Tracker.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And so we also have another question about data onboarding. Do you not add antennas to the system from data sheets, Evan? If you can say something about the data onboarding.
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a perfect question. So in addition to API integration that we highlighted, that bringing this data, and as Andy just now said, bringing the data from Site Tracker, let's say, via API, we're also able, as I'm showing here, import and export data from spreadsheets. So, for example, if you track all this ancillary data in your spreadsheets, or if you can export from whatever software you're using into the spreadsheets, you can basically import or export this data from your spreadsheets directly. So you don't need to populate it by hand. You don't need to search our ancillary database. You just click import from CSV. It's basically like a Excel spreadsheet format. And in one click, you basically bring it into the system, as easy as that.
Yes. And we have a final question about the ancillaries. Does the system show the cables connected to each antenna?
Yes, what we are showing at the moment is cables. You can see it in the 3D view. It's a big cluster of cables right there within the tower body, and you can specify what is the starting point of your cable and what is the end point. For example, end point at the elevation of your antenna, which you are connecting with a cable. But of course, this maybe if you are talking about this tail, so-called tails. We are not showing them, the tails, basically from this big cluster of antenna from this big cluster of cables to the antenna itself. No, we are not showing it, but we are really interested in all this feedback, so we can actually implement something like that in the future. And that's why we really enjoyed working with Telia, because every time when we hear feedback, and it's so much of this very useful feedback like this one, that we are working immediately and we are implementing this type of developments. For example, I clicked on this icon. Here we list top 3 recent implementations that we bring. And as you can see, we do it every like in this case, every month we pushed new developments. So for example, this month, customization of hold down bolt, last month, automatic shielding that we covered in this discussion. And before that, customized wind directions that we also actually highlighted today. So that's the power of working with us, that we are not just inactive, we are really, really active, and we are bringing more and more functionalities every single month.
And I think we can take a last question regarding customer equipment. Is Shapemaker planning to add some functionality for TowerCos to add it directly in your tool?
What does it mean exactly?
Probably the ancillaries added directly into Shapemaker.
I'm not sure I fully understand, but ancillaries, as you can see, as we were showing, directly from maybe from the client themselves being able to add it. Yes, that's okay. I think I understand. So if the client, let's say, if the mobile network operator can add as ancillary directly in and the answer is yes. We are working on these different profiles, user profiles. For example, it can be a user profile as a tower company engineer who works in a tower co, who owns the structure and who can do everything within the structure. But we're also working on the profile of a client, like mobile network operator, who will be able to log into the specific structure and see and install the colocation application, and then click on submitting the request for the owner of the structure to approve it or reject it. So it's not possible yet, but this is one of our features that we are working on, these different profiles to completely speed up the process and remove the bottlenecks. And also part of these profiles will be probably maintenance teams, structural engineers, power management teams, and mobile network operators. So majority of stakeholders in telecom business.
Okay, I see an additional comment to the question, meaning cabins, shelters, adding rooms, etc. with TowerCos.
Yes. At the moment, we don't, as you can see, we don't have the shelters, but we are also developing it. So basically, the shelter and the equipment in the shelter, yes, it will be also released in. It's on our roadmap of development. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, unfortunately, we are exactly on time, but I see it's a lot of questions, but we are happy to answer them and have another webinars, and we will review the questions and pick the topics for the next webinars. So huge thanks for Andy joining for Telia Towers Norway, and thanks everyone. And we hopefully can link up next time again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.